is Barbara Clown.
Isn't that Susan's,
Wife, yeah,
Hager's mother?
mother-in-law.
Mm.
I see him at the bank all the time. He's got something wrong with his feet.
See, Bernie. I don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I
Hello?
hear you now, Bernie. Is a Navi Shear now with Dr. Agustin now? Or did I
Yes,
miss
he's
it?
starting. He just finished the Daf Yomi, so he needs a 2-3 minute.
Oh, that was Dafyomi.
Yeah.
Ah, got you. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mario,
What is he doing? What is he doing?
it's Shmuel Aleph Perik Yud Ches. We're just starting the 18th Perik.
Well, Aleph, Paragraph Fed. Okay. thank
Chapter 18.
you. Yud Chet.
What is
Hi, Susie and Ernie.
What's Kechaltel? That he was able?
Carlos, when he finished.
Oh.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We are on Perak Yud Ches. I mean, I saw Ellen before, was here.
She'll be back.
Come on over. You're in the middle.
Ellen's here.
Wait a minute.
This way. Is that better?
Yeah. Hi. See me anyhow.
People.
Hi. Hi, hi.
See everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh,
Barbara Khan. Oh, that's good.
To remind everybody, this week, Motzei Shabbos is going to be the Navi Shir at 8 o'clock. Okay?
Motzei Shabbos.
Motzei Shabbos, 8 p.m. Hope that works for everybody, and then we'll see how that works for, then when the clock changes,
And the DAF?
the daf will be at 7:30.
Oh, okay.
And again, most of the people in this year is part of the Tzur Bashir. There's going to be a Siyum Sunday night, 7:30.
So it's coming Sunday?
Correct, next Sunday night. The rabbi who's in charge, Rabbi Podlashek, is coming with certificates, and there's going to be a nice scene. We'll have the rabbis here for all the people who finished your day and their wives.
So what time?
7:30. I hope everybody can make it that Sunday night. I'll send a reminder by email tonight.
We'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Okay, Perak Yud Ches. So we finished last week the battle of David and Goliath. And remember, Vayomer, the last pasuk there, Vayomer Lav Shaul ben mi ata anar. Who are you? Whose son are you? Vayomer David ben Avdecha Yishai beit Halachmi. I'm the son of Yishai. Rav Schwab was head of the Yekka community in Washington Heights. It shows David's tremendous humility, and to show that he didn't want to hurt Shaul's feelings, because remember, we've already learned that David was playing the harp for Shaul all the time. He had sent for David from Yishai's home. He knew everything. So obviously, Shaul was showing signs of mental illness. And David didn't want to make him feel bad, recognizing that perhaps that Shaul's not in his right mind. Like he could have said to the king, my king, I'm your harp player. I played you harp last night. And you asked me to come from Yishai's house. No. In order, he just said very simply, Ani ben Abdecha Yishai. Based on that, look at the next pasuk, Perek Yud Ches. After David finishes speaking to Shaul, it says, "B'nefesh Yehonatan nikshara b'nefesh David." We begin this tremendous friendship between David and Yonasan. So much so that in Pirkei Avos it says, "Ezo Ava," that an Ava that will last forever is an Ava that is Einot Tluya B'Davar. It doesn't have. It's not connected to some external thing, passion, desire, some ulterior motive, and an Ava that's Einot Tluya B'Davar will last forever. What is the example? An Ava that's Tluya B'Davar is Amnon v'Tamar, right? The David HaMelech's children, and they had an incestuous relationship. I think Amnon raped Tamar. We're going to learn that because it's a passion. It's related to it's a relationship connected to pleasure or some kind of ulterior motive. But David and Yonasan, it was a higher level. Very interesting. The Rambam brings it. We know the Rambam was an Aristotelian. We know that because he talks about the golden mean, that you should always, if you have various, if you're somebody anger or the opposite, you should always go to the middle. Well, that was an Aristotelian concept. Many philosophical concepts. Even the Christian world, which eventually adopted Aristotelianism with Thomas Aquinas, a lot of that was taken from Maimonides. That's why Maimonides is recognized as a philosopher even by the Christian world, because of most of that came through Arabic philosophers, Al-Farabi, and other Arabic philosophers in the year 1100, 1200, about the time that the Maimonides was active as well, which he probably picked it up through them as well. Because with the fall of the Roman Empire in 450 by the Goths, all of that was lost. It was present in Byzantium. Remember, there was a Western Roman Empire which fell in 450, but the Byzantium remained till like 1450. So there was a big repository in Constantinople of all the writings of Plato and Aristotle. But those dark ages from like the year 400 to 1200, nobody knew the scientific thoughts of Archimedes and Platonic thoughts, Aristotle, etc. Rambam was part of it, along with the Arabic philosophers that brought that in. Why do I say all this? Because it was an Aristotelian concept where he said, if you have a friendship that's utilitarian, that is, give me this. I looked at you. If you're friends with somebody because you want to get something from somebody, that's not a good friendship. Here, as opposed to friendships of pleasure and usefulness, perfect friendship exists. Aristotle argues between persons who are virtuous. There's no friendship among crooks. True friends wish the good of each other. Their friendship lasts as long as they are themselves good and is therefore more enduring. There's no ulterior motive. You want good for your friend, and your friend wants good for you. And that's the ultimate in friendship. And that's represented by David and Yonasan. We begin to see that here. By the way, the Radak points out that up until now, Yonasan is called Yonasan without a hey. And now, until the rest of the Sefer, you're going to see a hey attached to Yonasan, because Hashem attaches his name to this type of relationship, like a relationship that is a pure relationship, not based on any other ulterior motive.
But they also called him Yehonasan at the beginning when he fought the Plishtim on his own.
Because he was Moiser Nefesh. That's another example where the hay was attached to his name, because it was Moiser Nefesh. There he went by himself and he defeated all the Plishtim. That's how the Meforshim explained the other exception, why the hay is there. So the pasuk says, "Vayikachal Torah be'Roshov Nafesh Yonatan Nikshra b'Nefesh David Vayaveyu Yonasan Kinafsho." What's the connection between the Dibur that David just concluded with Shaul, and all of a sudden we're introduced to Yonasan. So the Meforshim explain that Yonasan heard this anivus, this humble statement of David, because he saw how humble he was. That he didn't, and he saw that he didn't want to hurt Shaul's feelings, that he didn't remind Shaul, oh, you know me. So Yonasan saw these excellent midos, these midos hametsuyonim, that so therefore you can recognize in a friend with great midos, so he wants to stick to that kind of person. The thing that leads to ava is anivus. And the thing that leads to hatred is gaiva, is somebody who is haughty. The Gemara says that. Haiman Diyori, this is Rav Mary in Baba Basra. Haiman Diyori, Mishnim is Gafilu Ainshi Besalo Makabel. The person is haughty, even the people in his own house won't accept what he has to say, even his wife. His wife will humiliate him because haughtiness is the opposite of anivus, and it leads to sina rather than ava.
So Ernie, the Mayam Loe says that it's Yonasan felt like his soul was David's soul, that they were one of a kind, like V'ahavta l'reach hakamocha in its most esoteric form, that they were soulmates, call it soulmates. But it also then he goes on to contrast it with Shaul was jealous and was worried about his relationship with David because he knew that the Malchus would be taken away from him. And there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim that actually alludes to that. So if you don't mind my reading it. Yes, okay, go ahead. You take it over then. Because that's the first part of that, the love was as strong, right? As the grave, or as the permanence of the grave, and then it goes on and talks the next part after that talks about it. They play on words on Shaul with Shaul, that his jealousy was as bad as Shaul. What I guess
Shaul is the grave.
Yeah, correct.
Kina, right?
Right.
Where is it?
Just like these two mitos. Also, these two mitos, there's no gvul, there's no limit to them. You can go all the way to death on either way. Both Ava and Kina, there's no limit to this. The Tiferes Yisrael, who's one of the expositors of Pirkei Avos, on the parak we discussed, Kol Ava Shehi Tluya B'Davar, right? Amnon V'Tomer and all that. He describes the love between two friends, Ke'avas Av Leben, like a father and a son. You can't abolish such love, even if the son's not acting appropriately. That kind of friendship will still survive. Even Yonasan is going to find out later on that the Malchus is going to be taken from him. He did not refrain from remaining good friends with David. He was even moiser nefesh to prevent David from being killed. Okay, so the concept of friendship. Beis. You remember before, David was going back and forth to his father's house. Now, after David kills Goliath, Shaul doesn't want him to go back home anymore. He, remember, promised whoever kills Goliath is going to marry one of his daughters or his daughter. So he's going to be the son-in-law. It doesn't pasnish for the son-in-law to be a shepherd. So he's going to keep him around in the house now. Other people, that's how the Malbim learns. We've learned before that he kept good soldiers around him all the time. Shaul was always building his army. And of course, David showed himself to be an excellent soldier. Pasuk Gimel. Vayichrot Yonatan v'David bris. The avaso oso kenafsho. They wrote a covenant between themselves. Now, who normally writes brisim? It's people like enemies, like Avram and Avimelech are koires bris. But this bris is not because they're fearful of each other. It's due to the tremendous love between them. Similar to the bris that Klal Yisrael has with Hashem. Then it says, Pasuk Dalid, Vayispashet Yonasan es ha'me'il asher alav. He takes off his cloak. Gives it to David. Umadav and his armor, Valcharbo, his sword, Vadkashto, Vadchagoro, his bow and arrow and his belt. These are simonim, say the Abarbanel, that he's admitting to the fact that David is going to become the king. And he's going to be the Yoresh of the Malchus after Shaul, in place of Yonasan. Vayetze David b'chol asher yishlachenu Shaul yaskil.
Is this bris between Yonasan and David? This is all at the behest of Yonasan?
Say that again?
Is the bris between Yonasan and David at the behest of Yonasan?
It's behest on both of them. And Yonasan is, by giving over his clothing, that's the simon of the bris and the simon of the Ava between them.
Did Jonathan ever marry? Bernie.
It's an interesting question. I think it's going to come up in the future because we're going to see Yonasan had children. So I think he did.
Oh, he did. Okay.
I think Ellen's question is, at this stage, you don't hear David responding the love and affection for Yonasan. Maybe later on.
Right. Yeah, you hit it.
Okay.
It's just a very unusual friendship.
I hear what Esty is driving at. No, I think
No, I'm not driving it. It's just modern literature portrays them differently, but obviously, but I'm just curious to know if he ever married. But you're
Yes,
saying he had children, so I guess he did. Yeah.
yes, we're going to see the children of Yonasan coming up soon.
Okay.
So this is a platonic relationship from everything we know. There's no sexual characteristic to it at all, not told by anything. But it's I think it's designed to, you're supposed to, have a chaver, and it describes what kind of chavrus you're supposed to have with people. It shouldn't be utilitarian. It should be this kind of ava that David and Yonasan had for each other.
Well, it says Knei Lecha Chaver.
Well, I
Acquire
was going to say that.
Well, we have to go into that a little bit to understand why does it say knei. I mean, we have to understand that. That's in Pirkei Avos, and I don't have really anything to say about that at this year, but I think it's worth discussing why Chazal used that terminology. But what I wanted to learn this medrash of what Bernie brought up from Shir HaShirim, that the love is Azakamavis Ava, which is the love of Yonasan and David, and the Kishol Kina. The Musar Navrim say, we see a reason also to praise David. Maybe we could say, when Shaul was so jealous of David, maybe it has something to do with David HaMelech. However, we see that David really was humble in front of Shaul, and therefore he didn't sort of engender the jealousy. And in general, ein harav miskana b'talmudo. Rebbeim are not jealous of their talmidim. In fact, they're very proud of their talmidim. Maybe we don't know what happened in the interpersonal relationship between David and Shaul, and maybe it led to Shaul being jealous of him. So, the fact that David was attracted to David, Yonasan was attracted to David's midos, shows that the kina that Shaul eventually had for him had nothing to do with David, because he was not proudful, etc., in front of Shaul HaMelech, the way he was because we talked about how he spoke to him. If he was proudful like that, Yonasan would not have loved him, would have hated him. So, Vayetze David b'kol Posukei. Vayetze David b'kol asher shalchenu Shaul yaskil. Shaul starts sending him into battle with his army. Vayisimeu Shaul al anshe milchama. Vayitav b'nei kol ha'am v'gam b'nei avdei Shaul. The people love it. The servants of Shaul love it. Maskil refers to success. The son of David HaMelech, the sun begins to rise for David HaMelech higher and higher and higher. We know that ever since he was nimshach b'shem HaMishcha, everything's going for David HaMelech. So the concept of Yaskil, because by using Seichel, that's what's leading to success. Pasuk Vav. Vayi b'voam b'shuv David ma'koises haplishti. In fact, when David HaMelech came back after killing Goliath, Vatetzena hanashim mikol arei Yisrael lashir v'amcholot. All the women would go out and they would sing and dance in circles. Likrat Shaul HaMelech, and they were going in front of Shaul HaMelech, betupim b'simcha v'shalishim, with drums, happiness, and other instruments. This, some say, was even before Shaul had appointed him to be one of the generals. Some say it's after. And some say this was musical instruments. Some say they danced in a circle, like the word az tismach betula b'machol, right? That they would go in circles towards Shaul, not David. We don't give covet to an Eved in front of his rabbi. Shaul is still the Melech. Nobody thought to be Mechabe David at this time. And they would be afraid of being a Moired b'Malchus.
I have a question about where it says in the previous pasuk, Vayitav be'enei kol ha'am, v'gam be'enei avdei Shaul. That's an unusual, addendum.
That refers to the other officers of the army. They weren't jealous, and the Meforshim explain that they didn't become jealous of him. And that's what, when David HaMelech says, Even moasu aboinim haisa l'rosh pina, they could have been jealous of him, but they were not. This is, again, one of you could see there's siyata d'shmaya going on every step of the way. Hashem is helping David HaMelech. Because in many cases, who's this guy? All of a sudden he comes and he's interfering. So that's the Avdei HaMelech, refers to the other officers. Now, what is this thing about the women going out? Well, we know that for the classic example, Shira Sayam, Vatikach Miriam HaNeviah, Vatetzena kol hanashim achareh betupim uv'mcholot. So this happened 500 years before. That somehow it was the custom for women to go out and to celebrate and to sing. So I just want to learn a little bit from the Iyei Hayam. By the Shir Sayam, we understand the men were separate and the women were separate. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Azi Asher Moshe of Israel. And then Miriam Nagas Anoshim B'Shira. Kimoshe Nag Moshe Anoshim. Now, how is it that the women sang in front of Shaul? What about Kol Be'isha Erva? It says in Brachas Chaf Daled Amud Aleph that the voice of a woman is Erva, just like her hair. You may not hear, it's a Isser. So how do they explain this issue? So the Gra, in his explanation, the Vaishur Sayom says that the Shira was just the men, meaning singing wise. And the Miriam lo shar klalam anoshim, the Shira isel anoshim bilvad. The Shilas and Shuvas Binyan Ze'ev says the women sang by themselves without the men. But here, that it says clearly the Shir and the Mecholos were in front of Shaul. So the Sefer HaMakneh, which is an Achron on Sefer Kiddushin, brings the Beis Yosef that the afilu kol zemer im hu yochol lechaven libo betfilos, of a person, he can be mechaven is davening where he doesn't hear, doesn't pay attention. He can daven in front of a voice of a woman. He says v'chein b'mara ein Israel shemistakel. You may not gaze at a, you understand, a quick glance. That's not his staklus. Re'ib alma mutter, says the Beis Yosef. And so says the Mogen Avram. Now, some say listakel is istakel harbe. But, and the Rambam says, kol bisha erv zonim rabbanon. And perhaps this episode where the women went out to dance in front of Shaul was before the rabbanon made the gzeira. Now, the poskim will hold that kol bisha erv is midoraisa. So that's only if somebody is miskaven to hear the voice of the women singing. But if the men are not miskaven to hear them singing, and it's just singing and they're not really miskaven to hear it, this area requires further iyun. It's not so pashut what went on here. Zayin. That there were some jokesters in the crowd who said, He kashol ba'alafav the David b'Ravosov. Shaul killed his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Was this a small group of the women? How did they speak like that in front of the king? Because we know they went out in front of the king, not in front of David.
And that's what started the jealousy.
But first of all, how did the women even say it? So some say
because the Plishtim were in full retreat after David killed
Goliath.
Goliath, yeah. As opposed to just having won a skirmish, which remember Shaul didn't follow when they were victorious. Shaul didn't have his army follow the Plishtim to wipe them out.
But Bernie Lamaisa, it does say that Shaul and the army chased after and they killed thousands. And all it says about David is that he killed Goliath. He killed one person. So we have to explain, first of all, why did they say Shaul killed thousands and David killed tens of thousands? And first of all, how did they say it in front of Shaul? So Rav Schwab said it was just jokesters. They were trying like comedians. But it's bad what they said. It wasn't correct that they were, and by the way, they should have praised Hashem. What did Miriam say? Shiru Lashem ki go'a go'a. In Dvorah said, Anochi Lashem, Anochi Ashira. Here they praised, David and Shaul. So they're not considered they did correct. Now, Shaul, we understand he killed thousands of Plishtim because he had Milchama. But David only killed Goliath. What does it mean he killed tens of thousands? Because there were people with Goliath. And apparently David killed Goliath and also tens of thousands of Plishtim that were with him. And Shaul only killed thousands. That's how Radak explains. Okay. And as Esti just said, Pasuk Ches, Vayichal Shaul Mo'od. Shaul got angry at this. Vayera be'einav hadavar zeh. He was very bad in his eyes. Vayomer nasnu David revavos. They gave David tens of thousands. V'li nasnu alofim. Me only thousands. V'od loach. And the only thing he doesn't have is the king, is the malchus. We know Shaul started off very onav. Remember the earlier people. Shaul was he was hiding. He didn't want to be king. Okay, so it's a very important Gemara in Menachos. And this is human nature. Tanya Rav Yeshua ben Prachya. Batchila kol oimer alela ani koise v'noisn lifnei ari. Before being Rav Yeshua ben Prachya was appointed the Nasi. But in response to people who would tell me, you should ascend to the position of the Nasi. But no, I would tie him up and place him in front of a lion because he suggested something. Ata, but now that I am the Nasi, whoever tells me to get down from that position, I'll throw a kettle of hot water, of boiling water at the suggestion. Meaning, this is the irony of somebody who first ran away from covet, but once if he's in that position, you don't want to lose it. And it's human nature. And you see it, in fact, in Shaul, because now he gets angry at the realization that he has a rival. The Mesilas Yesharim, Perek Yud Aleph, the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, in the 1750s and into the mid-1800s, one of the most important Musar books that we learn in Yeshiva, Mesilas Yesharim, says that Yisera Aleichem das HaKavod, greater than anything is the desire for kavod. A person can quench his yetzer for money and other pleasures, but it's the hardest regarding kavod. It's very hard for a person to see himself less than his friends. And the Ramchal himself brings Shaul, that what started the issue of kavod. Shenamar, he brings this pasuk, Vatena noshim amasachos vatomarna hika Shaul, and Vahi Shaul oyen as David. From this moment on, me'ayom ahu v'ala, he became jealous. Klol shel davar, hakavadu adoichik es leva adam yoser mikol atshukos v'amchedesh sheba'olam. That's what the Ramchal says. I don't know. Do we see that in? Could be. Listen, Trump had a lot of money, but he's right. You would think you don't need any more. I'm just saying an example. I don't know if it's true in real life what the Ramchal is saying, that the pursuit of kavod is greater than all other pursuits. Any comments?
Agreement. We agree with you. That's the way it is throughout history.
It's not a political. I'm saying it's a statement of fact. That is,
Yeah.
even very wealthy people who have everything, there's still something else they're chasing. So it's just a reality. It's seeing reality. Okay. It's not necessarily negative. Okay. Test. And Vahi Shaul oyenes David mayom ahu v'ala. He now looks at David with an ayin hara. That's why they use the word oyen for this concept. From now on, he's jealous of David. He sees Hashem being matzliach, and in fact, he's afraid of him. No, now Shaul is afraid of David because he sees Hashem is helping David in everything that happens. Pasuk Yud. Again, Shaul is afflicted with periodic melancholy episodes. Vayisnabe besocha bayis. And he normally the word vayisnabe means he prophesied. How the David minagain biado kiyom biyom vachanis biad Shaul. David is playing the harp like he normally does when Shaul's in a bad mood. And Shaul is a warrior, and he has a spear in his arm. And he would do target practice, I guess, at certain times. Very interesting. Some Meforshim point out the king is supposed to have a certain object with him at all times. What is that?
Sefer Torah.
Sefer Torah. But yet what is Shaul having here with him? He's having a spear because he's sick. It's Meforshim say it's machmas cholyov. It's his melancholy, his depression. He was paranoid that people are trying to kill him. Now, some say that the word vayisnabe means he spoke shtus. He's speaking, not an understandable language, like raving incoherently. But the Abarbanel learns that it was mamish nevuah. But there's difference from the word navi, who is mushpa be'emes, b'Hashem yisbarach, to the word vamiznabe. That's somebody who's trying to prepare himself. Maybe he's trying to be a navi. Like it says, Eldadu meidad misnabim b'machaneh. Remember the Eldadu meidad in Parshas Baloischa, that Moshe is told to pick 70 people. They picked from each tribe, but it was only 72, so 2 were left over. So El Daramed are misnabim. It doesn't say they're Nevi'im. They're trying to be misnabim. So that's how they're mishtadel to be. So therefore, that's how the Abarbanel proves this is not a reflection of Shaul's sickness, because he argues with the Malbim seems to suggest it has to do with his sickness. So what happens? Pasuk Yod Aleph. Vayatel Shaul et hachanit. He throws the spear. Vayomer akeh beDavid uvakir vayisod David mipanav pamayim. Shaul had in his mind, I'm going to throw the spear as if I'm doing target practice, but it's going to go through and through, and David's going to be killed by the other. So nobody's going to know that it was me, that I had anything to do with the death of David. It's going to be an accident. But David turned and got away, and therefore the spear didn't kill him. Behashgachas Hashem, because he was playing the harp, he didn't see what Shaul was doing. Hashem made it that he turned just at the right time. Here now clearly, again, the Abarbanel and the Malbim, Shaul sees that there's a special Hashgacha Pratis that's attached to David with Hashem. Yud Beis, Vayar Shaul mifnei David, and of course Shaul is even more fearful. Ki Hashem imo u'me'im Shaul sar. He sees that the favor of Hashem has moved away from him to David. Yud Gimel, Vayisireru Shaul me'imo. So Shaul has another plan. Vayisimeo lo sar elef vayetzev v'volef ne'am. He makes him, again, the general over 1,000 soldiers. What's his idea? He's going to go out in battle and get killed in battle. That's how the Mitzudas David learns. Now, this wording, Vayetze vayavo, in the pasuk, in the parsha of the Melech, in Dvorim, it says he will come in front of them and he will go in front of them. They use exactly the same language. He's Yotze uva lifneim. David begins to act like the king. Yudal vayi David l'chol darko maskil. Again, David in all his ways is successful. Vashem imo, and Hashem is with him. He's doing everything with seichel and das, with hashgacha, and Hashem is with him. The hatzlach of David is not because of his personal strength or his wisdom. He had siyata d'shmaya since he was nimshach l'melech.
How did Shaul ever think that he was going to be successful in his plan when he realizes that Hashem is with him and everything he tries to do is not working out anyhow?
Yeah, I think that question is going to be asked. It's a very good question because, but Shaul is going to try anyways.
Wouldn't you, I'm sorry, my name is Barbara Klein. Sorry,
Oh,
hi.
yeah, by the way, Barbara, please
Yes.
welcome. I was told that no, we don't see her, but she must.
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize, okay?
No problem. But welcome to our group. We're so
Thank
happy
you, it's wonderful, it's really wonderful.
to be part of our shir, and of course, we welcome her with, the whole group welcomes you, yes.
Thank you so much, but I wanted to say, wouldn't you possibly attribute it to the fact that there is depression? So in terms of clarity, in a consistent fashion, I mean, that would be an influencing factor, would it not?
Absolutely. In fact, mental illness.
Yes.
Yes, mental illness. We've been saying all along because of his illness. That could be a good answer to what Ellen is asking. It's not rational. It's irrational.
Exactly.
Irrational.
But you could also say that Shaul already knew from Shmuel that he was not going to continue ruling yet. Like anybody else who's trying to cling to power, he doesn't give up. He looks for any way in which he can hang on.
Or unless there's an impulsivity, that he doesn't really see things through. There's impulsivity here. So I don't think that that's clearly on his mind, So, I mean, there's antagonism and he acts impulsively, I think.
And by the way, the Meforshim on this pasuk, it says Vayihi. So it says in Masechta Megillah, Yud Daf Yud Amud Beis, Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, Amrav Levi v'tem Rav Yonason, Dover zem masaris biadenu ma'anshe knesses agdoila, Kol makom shenemar Vayihi eino elo loshon sar. Whenever it says Vayihi, it's always bad news coming. And this begins the bad news between Shaul, who is jealous of David, that Vayishol oin is David. It's a hint of this Vayihi. Weiter. Let me just see if I wanted to say something here. Yeah. We learned that Chazal already. Okay. Posuk Tezvav. Vayar Shaul asher hu maskil ma'od vayogar miponov. Again, Shaul sees in this new role as the general that he's being successful. Nothing's happening to him. Vayogar is again fearful. He's fearful, not necessarily from his gvura, but the fact that Hashem is with him so much. That's Zion. V'chol Yisrael v'Yehuda ohev es David. V'chol Yisrael, that's referring to the Shevet of Shaul, which is Binyamin. And David's Shevet is Yehuda. So everybody likes him. The other tribes, Binyamin, even Binyamin's home tribe. Ki hu yotze vava lifneim. Again, it says in Sefer Bamidbar Chav Zayin, Yifkod Hashem lokei richos l'chol basar ish ala ha'eda. When Moshe is commanded to appoint Yoshua, it says Hashem is going to appoint somebody, Asher yetzei lifnehem v'asher yavo lifnehem, who shall leave in front of them and come in front of them. V'asher yotzeim v'asher yiviem. So what does Rashi say over there? Asher yetzei lifnehem lo kederech malchei ha'umos sheyoshim v'vateim u'meshalchin es chaylosem l'milchama. Not like the Goyish kings that send out, they stay at home in the palace and they send out their soldiers to do battle. Ela kamosha asiti anish nilchamti b'sichon v'og. Moshe Rabbeinu says, it's like when I went out personally to battle Sichon v'og. Shenamar David, Moshe Rabbeinu was told, Al tira oto. Ukiderech shasa Yoshua shenamar vayelech Yoshua elav. Vayomer lo halanu ata v'chein b'David u'omer ki hu yotzei uva lifnehem. Yotzei barosh v'nichnas barosh. David Melech is not in the back of the army, he's in the front. Harei dezeh yam yikori tafkidei hamelech shu batzmo yikabel achrayut v'naheget imo lamilchama. The king had to accept that responsibility, even before he was king. And that's why the people really respected and honored him. He's not somebody who's directing traffic from behind, he's right in the front. Which army has its soldiers leading the units from front? It's the Israeli army. They follow this pattern of David HaMelech, that the tank commander says they're in the front, they're not in the back. So that's the derech HaMelech, the derech of David HaMelech. Pasuk Yud Zayin Vayomer Shaul David. Hinei biti agdola. Remember, Shaul had promised, or at least one of the psukim say, that the people were talking about that whoever kills Goliath will become wealthy and will get to marry one of Shaul's daughters. We never heard Shaul himself say that. So Vayomer Shaul David. Hinei biti agdola Meirav. He had an older daughter Meirav. He had a younger daughter Michal. Osai telachali isha. I will marry you off to Meirav. Chayeli leben chayil, but I want to appoint you again on a certain mission. V'yilachim milchamas Hashem. V'shoel Omar al tihi yadi bo, utihi bo yad plishtim. The pasuk is telling us what's in Shaul's mind. My hand shouldn't touch him. By putting him out into the battle with the plishtim will kill him. This is his second plan, that by promising his daughter, David HaMelech will go out in battle, possibly be killed. Now, how could he come up with these new Tanoim? Didn't he already make a promise that whoever killed Goliath gets his daughter? So the Malbim says that it didn't necessarily mean he would give him Meirab, maybe give him the younger daughter, because he has to wait until the older daughter gets married first. Our Barbanel learns Bichlal had nothing. Shaul HaMelech never promised it. It was the people who were like talking about rumors. Maybe whoever kills Goliath, Shaul will give it, but it didn't come from the mouth of Shaul. And that's why, in fact, when David eventually meets with Shaul on the Indian of Goliath, they don't even talk about it. Not before the battle, not after the battle. That's how the Abarbanel wants to learn. Pasuk Yud Ches. Vayomer David el Shaul. Mi anochi? Who am I? Umi chayai? Mishpachas Avim Yisrael ki chatan lamelech. I come from such humble house. How could I be the son-in-law of the king? Again, his anivus. I'm a shepherd. I'm not roy to be the mechutin of the son of the melech.
Wasn't he also viewed as illegitimate at one point in his life?
So some say that when it says, I'm going to get to Barbara's statement, when it says Michayai, some bring the Zohar that really, remember, David HaMelech wasn't supposed to be born. And Adam HaRishon was supposed to live 1,000 years. And he gave 70 years of his life to David. So that's what it means, Michayai. Really, I don't even have independent life. Some say that this refers to the yichus that he had some problem because of Rusa Moaviyah. In the last paragraph, we went through in depth this issue of Ammoni velo Ammonit and Moavi velo Moavit, that really you could only a male Ammonite or Moabite could not marry, but the women could. But there was a debate. There were Doeg Adomi held that no, even the Moabite women couldn't, and until they finally paskin in Bezdin by Shmuel Ramosi that but by the way, it was not fully accepted until after the death of David HaMelech. What Barbara was saying, we're going to see later on, God willing, when we get to Malachim, when Shlomo Melech tries to bring the Aron HaKodesh into the newly built Beis HaMikdash, the gates don't open until they say the pasuk Bavur David Avdecha Al Tashev Pnei Meshichecha. One of the psukim we say in the Ataresa. Once he said Bavur David Avdecha, the gates open to show all of Klal Yisrael that David is indeed miyuchas, that there was now a public nace that the Aron couldn't go in until they claimed that David HaMelech had proper yichus. But yes, right now, there are Meforshim who say that the reason why here he's saying, I can't get married because I have problems with yichus. Now, the Das Soifrim and Rav Schwab say something interesting. That David refused to marry because he really thought he was not roy. On the other hand, how could you say that? He was already nimshach with the Shemin HaMishcha by Shmuel. So he knew he was going to become king. Maybe he should have accepted this and married Meirav. And not only that, it could provide some kind of hemshechiyut to the Malchus of Shaul. However, it seems very clear David didn't want to be Meshadach in Shaul. Not just because of his anivus, but because of this, what he now begins to see that David is looking at him with ayin hara. Yes, that Shaul is looking at him with ayin hara and the whole jealousy, and therefore he understood that Shaul is trying to kill him, and danger, and therefore he wanted to run away from the house of Shaul. That's how Rav Schwab learns. Was in David's mind. Yud Tes. Vayihi be'eteitet meirav bat Shaul David. When it came time to get married, he nitna ladriel mecholati liisha. She had been given to a different man, to Adriel Mecholati as his wife. Now, how did Shaul do this? To give his daughter to another man, if he already was masking with David that he's going to marry Meirav to him. It sounds like Lavan Arami, who instead of giving Rachel gave Leah. It's hard to say that that's all because we could say, oh, maybe it's the Ruach Ra, the melancholy, the lack of rationality. But this fits more in this concept that really David didn't want to marry Meirav. So he married her off to somebody else. and he really didn't have kiddushin with her. And therefore, we're going to see there's going to be a machlokes, whether there was kiddushin with Meirav or not. But according to this pshat, that there was no kiddushin, there was no problem with Shaul marrying her off to Adriel. Other people say Meirav was a ketana. So you can't be makadesh a ketana. However, only a father can be, you can give a father kesef kiddushin, and he can give the daughter even as a ketana. Only the kiddushim only works if the father is involved in it. Now, some say, so some say she was a gedola, but by a vas melech, because she's a princess, of course the king's going to have to get involved. The Metzudas David says, "He nasna yedei atzma ladriel." This was a modern marriage. This was a love pact. That means she accepted kiddushin from Adriel on her own. The kiblu menu kiddushin without the father knowing. And the Metzudas David is going like the opinion that David didn't refuse to marry Rav. He wanted to marry Meirav, or he accepted to marry Rav. So then, if the kiddushin was on with Meirav with David, how could Shaul give Meirav to somebody else? So the Metzudas David says Shaul wasn't involved. Meirav was a gedola. She already accepted kiddushin from Adriel on her own opinion, and therefore, once a woman has accepted kiddushin, she can't accept kiddushin from somebody else. And David didn't give her kiddushin yet. Now, on the other hand, if she was a gedola, according to this pshat, how did Shaul give? A father doesn't have the right to do that. We said only as a ketana. So some say because she's a bas melech, of course the king has to be involved. I want to learn the Gemara in Sanhedrin Yud Tes Amud Beis. Machlokes Tanoim, Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Yosi, Heich Nosa David Shtei Achayos B'Chayeim. So first of all, later on, David Melech is going to marry Michal. Now, you're not allowed to marry two sisters while they're both living. You can marry a sister after the death of another sister, but not at the same time in their lives. So how did Yaakov Avinu marry Rachel and Leah? So they weren't Jews yet. It was before Matan Torah. They were outside of Eretz Yisrael. Some of Forshim learn. Therefore, when on their way back to Eretz Yisrael, what happens? Rachel dies and is buried on the border. That's why when Klal Yisrael goes out into Golus, there's Kever Rachel to give us comfort. But because when Yaakov came back in Israel, he couldn't be married to two sisters at the same time. So Shaul Talmid of Rabbi Yossi Heich Nasa David Shtei Achayos B'Chayeim. Amar Lehen Michal Achar Misas Meirav Nasa. So according to Rabbi Yossi, he was married to both of them, but Meirav died, and he married Michal after the death of Meirav, which is permitted. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcho Omer, Kiddushay Tos Hayolo b'Meirav. He had mistaken Kiddushin. It was Kiddushin b'Tos, Mekach Tos, and therefore the Kiddushin really never existed. Shenemar, Tno es ishti Michal asher rasti li b'mei orlos plishtim. We're going to learn later on, if we get there tonight, that Shaul is going to put another clause in marrying one of his daughters because he wants him to get killed, and he's going to challenge him to kill 100 plishtim and bring him their foreskins. Well, first of all, the Gemara wants to know, my Talmud, where do we see from this statement of Tna es ishti Michal asher rasti li b'mei orlos that there was Kiddushay Tos? Amrav Papa, Michal ishti v'lo Meirav ishti. Because when he said Tna es ishti es Michal, the Gemara darshans, Michal was my wife and Meirav was never my wife. My Kiddushay Tos, says the Gemara. What was the Kiddushay Tos? T'chsiv. Whoever kills Goliath is going to become wealthy. Ozil Kotle. So he went and killed him. Armor low. Malva Yitzchak Gaboy. You know what? I owe you the money. That's called a malva, a debt. The Mekadesh b'malva eina mekudeshes. The Gemara in Kiddushin, we learn you can't be you have to give a woman something shava pruta to be makadesh her. But with a debt, you cannot, the fact that you bring a note and you say, the guy owes me $1,000, be mekadesh with me with this milveh, it's ena mekudeshes. So also Yov Ladriel. So it was not a good kiddushin, and therefore he married her off to the Adriel. Because she gave 8 lititala David, not Ladriel, it's Meir of Bas Shola David. So Shaul held that there was no kiddushin with Meirav because mekadesh b'milva is ena mekudeshes. But David felt it was not mekadesh b'milva el ba'anos mechila malva the mekudeshes. By telling Shaul, you don't have to pay me any money back, and you forgive the loan, that you can be mekadesh. That's worth something, and that you can be mekadesh with. So that's why David felt it was not kiddushin betos. That's one way of learning. The Abarbanel says that really Shaul, like we learned before, never promised anything to anybody. It was just the people that were rumoring that there was a rumor that had gone up, but Shaul never promised. So it was all kiddushay tos, and that's the machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shmuel ben Korcha. Rabbi Yossi suffered ayu kiddushin l'meirav mi David anos mechilas malveh, that it was really kiddushin, and David forgave the loan. And with the benefit to Shaul that he forgave the loan, you can give over your daughter for kiddushin. And that's why he has to explain that David only married Michal after the death of Meirav because it was really good kiddushin. But Rabbi Shimon ben Korcha holds that the whole thing was kiddushay tos, and because it was mekadesh b'milva, not with the forgiveness of the milva, but with the milva itself. Okay, so I just that's an interesting debate that goes on with the poskim regarding this issue of David and Meirav. I just want to yes, go ahead.
I read somewhere, I don't remember where, but that Shaul didn't want to give Meirav to David, but rather the younger daughter, like to sort of put him more in his place, that not to give him the cover that he should take the older daughter.
We just said that was one of the svaras that we said that yesh loim the mayor. No, like we said that svara of that when he promised a daughter, he didn't necessarily refer to the oldest daughter. He was referring to the younger daughter, and that's why by giving Meirav to Adriel, it was not a problem. Al Shola Melech, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 9:00. We'll continue. We'll finish up this parak and definitely start parak Yutes. But Saturday night, 8:00. So Mario, remind everybody Saturday night, 8:00. Have everybody any other comments that anybody has to?
And just in Pasuk Tezayim, where it says V'chol Yisrael v'Yehuda, it makes it seem like there's already like sort of factions in Bnei Yisrael, that you're separating Yehuda and Yisrael.
Well, we're going to see, Ellen, that David HaMelech is king in Judea for 7.5 years before the rest of Klal Yisrael accept him. So there is clearly tribal,
Yes.
Judah versus Benjamin.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said it's very much in play. David HaMelech is going to be king by Yehuda for 7 years before he's king of the rest of Klal Yisrael. David ruled for 40 years. He only ruled for 7 years in Yehuda first, then 33 years for the rest of Klal Yisrael. There was tribalism and there is factionalism. And we're going to see that the tribes of Binyamin and the other tribes don't accept David right away.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, good night.